New Year's Eve 1983. Martin Scorsese is getting ready to go to an event after a tough year working on his failed passion project The Last Temptation of Christ. After the budget ballooned alongside protests against the film, Paramount grew uncertain and pulled the plug. Putting on his suit with Entertainment Tonight's review of the year on in the background, Scorsese watches as the curtain on screen pulls back to reveal the film they've named Flop of the Year. The King of Comedy. After a disastrous year, he picked up a script he remembered liking when sent months before by Amy Robinson, who had starred in Mean Streets for him. Having initially turned it down due to his commitments to Last Temptation, he reached out to say he was interested in taking the project on. Robinson and fellow producer Griffin Dunne, who had auditioned to star as the 11-year-old son in Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore when he was 18, although got a half-hour conversation out of it with Scorsese that began with the words, "You're a little old for the role." Anyway, they both approached the current director, or at the time current director, of the project, who they'd hired a month or two after being impressed by a short film they'd directed, to break the news to them. They were met with a response of, "I gracefully withdraw from the project. I do not want to stand in the way of anything Martin Scorsese wants to do." Tim Burton would go on to make Pee-wee's Big Adventure as his feature debut. Having had difficulties with a studio on Last Temptation and successive productions that had gone towards or over 100 days each, Scorsese wanted to go back to a stripped-back, fast-paced way of filmmaking. Independent production was the way to go, to get back to that freedom he had in the new Hollywood of the 70s and calling back to his student days. In some ways, he embraced a bit of Roger Corman, who had given him one of his first big directing jobs out of school with Boxcar Bertha in the early 70s. As Scorsese would say, he taught you about the realities of the marketplace. There had to be a chase scene here, there has to be a touch of nudity there. He didn't apologise for that. You had to embrace that if you were going to make a movie for him. I didn't mind embracing the Corman formula. He'd say elsewhere after Corman's passing, "I will always be proud that I graduated from the school of Roger Corman." Corman regular Dick Miller, who would often appear as a one-scene character in the films of Corman graduates, crops up in a diner scene in this film with the opportunity to say the title. The running theme on the set of After Hours was whatever you have to do, both to make something convincing and just get the film itself made. If in need of a sudden jump or a jolt or just shocked response from his cast, Scorsese had a box full of glass that he'd drop a brick into just next to the camera, something which Griffin Dunne would take for his own directing ventures. There's one shot in the later stages of the film where Dunne has to burst through a door, tired, stressed, exasperated, just giving up completely. And Scorsese kept saying that he wanted more, so Dunne went round the corner to a bar, declared that drinks were on him for everyone, and as the guy behind the bar was turning for him to pay, Dunne fled out and back to the set, with a group starting to follow behind that were going to be dealt with by nearby ADs. It is to some extent the kind of thing that, like Laurence Olivier said to Dustin Hoffman on the set of Marathon Man, "Have you tried acting, my dear boy?" Apparently, when asking Scorsese what he was going to do after his passion project was cancelled, the director told Dunne, "Just laugh." When Dunne would look behind the camera after a scene, sometimes during, he would catch the director covering his face, trying to muffle his chuckles at the dark chaos being thrown over the character of Paul Hackett. It was through this that he started to piece together just how much of Scorsese and his experiences may have influenced the character. All the bad things and frustrations that had happened to him the previous year, his feelings towards studios and the film industry, they went into this film. One of the scenes that Scorsese added was the one of Paul trying to get into the nightclub. The directors described After Hours as being like walking into a room where everyone's talking about you. The look you get as awkward silence descends and everyone realises that's the guy who made the flop of the year. Paul doesn't belong in this part of New York City. It's not that everyone he meets is strange or weird, although they seem that way to him. It's more that he's not made for this set of streets that's very hard to escape from. Having had his biblical epic fall through, with After Hours, Scorsese would in some way make his own darkly comedic version of the Book of Job, but instead of losing all possessions and livestock being killed in fire or lightning, we get subway prices being raised, Catherine O'Hara with an ice cream van, and Cheech and Chong. Throughout production, Scorsese and his team embraced chaos and just laughing, literally running with Paul to speed through his journey and filming. On the final day of shooting, after calling a wrap on just over a month of night shoots, something which was Scorsese's decision, the director walked up to Robinson and Dunne, toasting with champagne, and said, Thank you for giving me back my love of making movies. And with that, please sit back and... I don't think relax is quite the right term for this film, so let's say and enjoy. Sit back and enjoy After Hours.